collaborative effort. And first I would like to celebrate and thank my co-curator, Tom Leach, who's in the audience, for Tom brought in the St. John's Bible. He worked with Tim Turnus, and I'm not sure if Tim is here in the audience. He is in the museum somewhere, but Tom worked very hard for the last almost 3 years to bring St. John's Bible here to Santa Fe. And we decided to put the two exhibitions together about 2 years ago. And I'd like to also thank everybody who is on the exhibition team. Carolyn Lajoie is our exhibition designer. Natalie Brown-Baca is our graphic designer. Doug Jewell is our chief preparator. And I'd also like to thank my husband, Roger Atkins, for spending a lot of time volunteering to help also get the exhibition up. So we could have a round of applause for everyone. I'd also like to acknowledge all the photographers who are in the Contemplative Landscape exhibition. Janet Russick, Deborah Hunter, Teresa Neptune, Sharon Stewart, Kurt Giddings, Ed Ranney, David Robin, and Tony O'Brien, who's sitting here today. The History Museum is honored to be co-sponsoring this afternoon's event with the Museum of New Mexico Press for the book release of this beautiful new book. Anna Gallegos is here. She's the editor of the press. David Skolkin is here, who is literally the world's best designer. We're so privileged to work with him. And I'm not sure if Mary Walks is here as well. She edited the book. So this really is a team effort, a collaborative spirit. And I'd like to thank everybody who was involved with that. This event is the first in a series of lectures and programs that are scheduled periodically for the next 14 months during the exhibition. St. John's Bible will be here through April 7th. It's here through Easter. After St. John's Bible leaves, the Contemplative Landscape will stay up until next December 31st. And during all of that time, we have a series of lectures and programs and events that we'll be putting on. That lecture series is underwritten by the New Mexico Humanities Council, and there are several other people that I would like to thank for making this entire project possible. First, I would like to thank John Scanlon, who's in the audience, and the Scanlon Family Foundation. They underwrote Light in the Desert, and they also do they contribute so much to the art community here in Santa Fe that it would be impossible to ever thank them enough. I'd also like to mention that the Museum of New Mexico Shops will be selling Light in the Desert immediately after the talk this afternoon, right outside the auditorium, and Tony and Chris will be signing books after the Q&A with everyone. And so what I'd like to do now is to introduce both Tony O'Brien and Christopher Merrill. Their lives have intersected and overlapped in interesting ways, and they are the perfect combination of photographer and writer for our newest publication, Light in the Desert. Christopher Merrill is the director of the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa. In addition to the text for Light in the Desert, he has written 4 collections of poetry, edited several volumes, and has 4 books of nonfiction. One of the most interesting titles is Things of the Hidden God, Journey to the Holy Mountain. And sitting next to Chris is someone that you all know and love, Tony O'Brien. Tony O'Brien, when he isn't traveling around the world, has lived in Santa Fe for over 30 years. He teaches photography at the Santa Fe University of Art and Design, as well as documentary workshops at various locations in New Mexico and abroad. He began his photography career in 1973, working at the Santa Fe New Mexican. And I would like to also thank Pasatiempo. They did a wonderful article on Friday for Tony, which was great publicity for the exhibition and for the publication. We have a lot of support through the New Mexican and Pasatiempo, and it's always wonderful to collaborate with them. Tony's work has appeared in Life, Time, Newsweek, and the New York Times. He has also worked with the Ford Foundation on a land use project for Zuni Pueblo, as well as waterworks project for the Colonias along the Texas border for the Pew Foundation. And Tony, do you want to say a few words before?
Yes.
Okay, before we turn on the slideshow. Tony O'Brien.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. But I did want to just say a couple of words. Last night, for the dedication of the exhibition, The Contemplative Landscape, Fran Levine mentioned community and how it was about community and the community coming together. And really and truly, I owe my whatever successes I have, whatever, to this community. And community is what the book was about and brought the book to life. It was this community here and people from this community. And also, that's what the Benedictine way of life is about. It's based on community. We're all on our searches and our quests, but we need community to go forward. So I just really wanted to stress that, and also about the photographers that are in the show, and how honored I am to be a part of that community. So please, enjoy the show, but please truly enjoy the exhibition and our community. Thank you very much.
We're going to start with the slideshow, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tony and Chris, and they'll be talking to you.
again. I've been living with these photographs for 2 years in my office, smaller versions of them, and finally to have the chance to see them in this incredible exhibit. I urge you all to go and see it upstairs. And then between the pages of this book, which is the most exquisitely designed book I've seen in a very long time, keeps bringing me back to this question I have for Tony. We're going to go in many directions this afternoon, as is our want. In the middle of the book, Tony includes excerpts from his journal from the year that he spent in the monastery. And he makes a connection between his time in a prison cell in Kabul, Afghanistan, and the monk's cell at the monastery. So we thought it might be a good place to start, just to give you the backstory to Tony's journey to Christ in the Desert. So if you could say a little bit about
Excuse me. Maybe I should put this.
Keep it like, no.
Okay. How's that? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, actually, and I wrote in my journal and in the book, I was never really sure of what got me to Christ in the Desert. And it was a number of things. But it was when I was in prison, and it was my cellmate. He was a Muslim, a member of the most radical party, wanted to be part of the guerrilla movement. And it was really from him, because he was just an average human being. He worked for the government in the government office, not the guerrilla with the guns. But he had an inner strength and a belief and a trust. And I think that's where it began. And then he spoke a great deal about family and the importance of family. And at that time I wasn't married. So
you should say what time period were you in? How did you end up in the jail?
I ended up in the jail because I got on the wrong bus. I had the blue transfer instead of the red transfer. It's what happened throughout my career. No, I had been trying to sneak into Kabul with the guerrilla group, and we were sold out by one of the members of our group. At that time, there was a bounty on American journalists. And so that's how that happened. When I was in prison, we were in basically, there were two of us in the cell, but we were in solitary confinement in the sense that we spoke to no one, we saw no one. And your life gets reduced to just the here and now, and you spend a great deal of time in introspection. But as I say, back to Nader Ali, I mean, he was the one that sort of instilled in me a trust that I had been lacking. And I think, too, the other part of it is I realized in this whole process how vulnerable I was as a human being. And vulnerability is one of those things, it's like a book. It's on the shelf, but you never want to pull it down and open it. So when I got out of prison, I came back to Santa Fe. And I know the Carmelite nuns. There's a cloister of Carmelites here that I happen to know. Don't ask me why. But they had suggested that maybe I go up to Christ in the Desert and spend a week or two. And I had known about Christ in the Desert for years. Since I came out to New Mexico in like 1974 or 75 and working at the New Mexican. And I'd always thought about doing a story there, but I could never bring myself to go there. So I went up, spent a few weeks, and that's where the relationship began. And then I got married, we had a child. My wife's family, it turned out, had a very close relationship with the monastery. And then I went up to talk about doing a story. And this was a time of transition in my life, not only with marriage, but with my work. I had spent a great deal of time doing conflicts in the underbelly of our society, and I decided that it was time to kind of try to move on. But it's only through retrospect that I realized that maybe what got me to the monastery, unbeknownst to me at the time, was that I really hadn't figured out who I was throughout all of this. And so that was it.
Yeah. I think also, I get the sense that watching your cellmate pray 5 times a day as a devout Muslim had some impact on your own understanding
Sure.
of faith.
No, we would pray together. I would say my prayers. He would say his prayers. And it did. And when you are in that situation, I remember one day I was in my bunk. I think I mentioned this on another interview, but And I was very depressed and sad and whatnot. I watched this little bald head come up from the bottom of the bed, and he looked at me. And in Afghanistan, it's all based on hospitality. Hospitality is essential in the culture, just as it is in the Benedictines. And he looked at me and he said, Tony, are you okay? And I was, oh, no. And he put his hand up and he said, Tony, don't you worry. God will take care of us. And I was just flabbergasted and felt so stupid myself, so inadequate myself. This man had this faith and was so concerned about me.
One of the things I remember us talking about, I asked you how many photographs you took during the year that you were there, and this came apropos of some thoughts about the patience that seems to me to be integral to this project. And you remarked that you didn't really take that many photographs, I think maybe 120 rolls or something over the course of the year. And so what I'm just quite interested in is, we've all had the chance to see that, the photographs there. And there is a sense of the photographer waiting patiently for a very long time before getting the picture. And in your journal, you talk about the ways in which the prayerful life begin to help you cultivate a kind of patience. The way in which the photograph comes to you. Say a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I came out of a life in photography where you had to get the picture. That was what it was about. And you wanted to get the picture. And I brought that to the monastery. But one of the things that I did was I had my camera with me every day. But for the first month or 2 months, I never made a photograph. And that was, in a sense, to allow me to get a better understanding of the world around me and these men. And also to give them a chance to know who I am. But I was stepping into a world that I really knew nothing about. And you spend, like in photography, in the monastery, you spend a great deal of time by yourself, looking within. And I think it was sitting and watching and looking and seeing things happen, but being in a position where I was in my choir seat. Do I get up? Do I run across the room? Do I make this picture? And just sitting and beginning to watch all these photographs and watch the light change and becoming more patient. And as you said, instead of taking, waiting for it to come, and if I was in the position to do it, wonderful. If not, something was going to come along again. And I remember a time I was going to the chapel, it was snowing, and Xavier the Hermit was coming the other way, and we stopped and we started chatting. And the snow was falling, his white beard, his hood was up, the canyon in the background. I thought, my God, what a photograph. I mean, I gotta make this, what a portrait. And as I was starting to pick up the camera, I was like, whoa, we're having this conversation that's so incredible. I can't do that. If I lift the camera up, it's over by that connection we had. And so I let it go. And he went on his way, and I went on my way, kicking myself in the butt because I hadn't taken the picture. But it was that kind of thing, because another one was going to come. And to just be patient, and to sit. And that's basically what you do in prayer. And so I guess that's how it...
But it must have been anxious making, because coming out of a tradition of having to catch the photograph on the fly, particularly in conflict situations, your instinct is, if I don't get it.
Truly. But I learned to slow down. I really learned to slow down. And I also learned to keep it simple. And that was a process that came about throughout the year. And I probably didn't realize it at the beginning. There was so much that I didn't understand and realize. But it was, life takes on a different pace there, if you allow it. And you almost have to do it, take on this slower pace. So,
So tell us a little bit about what that life is like. What was it like for you then?
it was hell. Actually, or portions of it were. I mean, actually, a monk said to me once, best times I've had here when I was a guest in the guest house. No, it was it's a very structured life. You get up at 3:30 in the morning. Your day begins. You go to vigils. You go to the offices throughout the day. It ends at 8 o'clock. You work for half of the day, 4 hours. You go back to your cell for 4 hours for Lectio. Reading and being alone. But one of the things that I think happens, and I joke about it being hell, but it was, once again, it's you find yourself on your own individual quest, but you're part of this community. But when you're doing this, you spend a lot of time, just as in prison, looking within. And when you look within, or at least for me, you can't hide from yourself. You know, everybody out there thinks, oh, isn't he a nice guy? It's like, take a look. And that's difficult. That's difficult. And you doubt and you question. But slowly, the world begins to open up, I guess. And that's what happened there. And that's what happened sitting in the chapel, watching the light play throughout the day. Being with these men that you know, everybody's like, who are they? Who are they? Well, just tomorrow morning, go to the mirror, look in the mirror, and that's who they are. Right there. But one of the things that I found there was the difficulty they had. But at the same time, when there was a time for joy, it was just this total joy. No preconceptions, no worries about what anybody thought. But you would flip from that into those periods where it was difficult, because their quest is God. It's a long journey. It's a long journey.
Do you have a sense of where that spontaneous joy comes from? I'm thinking about my time in monasteries in Greece, and I heard so many great jokes.
Oh, God. It was like in prison.
Yeah.
Truly, I mean, my cellmate would tell me these incredible jokes. It's like, what are you talking about, man? And it was the same thing in the monastery. There's a great sense of humor, wonderful jokes. Yeah.
We made the comment that last night at the reception, the loudest laughter was coming from the monks. Yeah. They seem much happier than us.
That's true. It's true.
But do you have a sense of where that comes from?
Oh, you know,
in prison you have a sense of why, right? I mean, you're trying to release.
You're trying to release pressure and laugh and jest and find moments to be happy. You know, I'm not totally sure. I think, once again, they're not hiding from anything. They're not hiding from anyone. And I think that's part of it. Your experience, what did you...
It struck me, just quick background. One of the reasons that Tony and I got together in doing this project was the wonderful inspiration of Joanna Hurley, who thought that Tony's project coming out of his time in a war zone in Afghanistan, and I wrote a book about monasteries in Greece after covering the war in Yugoslavia for 3.5 years, and that was kind of what brought us together. I always felt that the holiest people I met on Mount Athos, it's a monastic republic in northern Greece with 20 monasteries, were the ones who seemed most open to every aspect of life. Of course, I met monks who were unpleasant, who weren't pleased about seeing a foreigner, particularly an American, there in the aftermath of the wars in Yugoslavia. But the ones who seemed to me to embody that living relationship with God often had a great sense of humor, and you could even see it during the services. They would hear a new joke and immediately go over and tell another guy in the choir this joke, and you'd see them starting to laugh. And I remember thinking, this is life in a monastery?
No, it's true, and I think that's true, actually. That's a very good way to put it. I do.
So one thing I wanted to run, I've been just thinking about so much with respect to these photographs. When you're covering a war, when you're in a conflict zone, and you're alert to everything going on outside you, in some ways, it's not all that hard to get a good picture or to get a good story. They come screaming at you. That's the nature of a tragedy like that. In the monastery, and in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, they have the whole notion of spiritual warfare, that the war is going on inside you. You talk about it in terms of looking in the mirror in the morning. What are some of the ways that, what are some things that you learned from the monks, from your time in the Benedictine tradition, that helped you to understand what the terms of that spiritual warfare might be?
I guess you can't leave. You're forced to confront it, whatever it may be. And I remember there was a day when my life seemed to be falling apart, and I was sitting in my choir seat and in the chapel, and I think it was during lauds in the morning, and I desperately wanted to get out. I wanted to leave. I wanted to do something. I wanted to talk to somebody, and I couldn't move. And it was just that kind of thing. You know, you can't also, you don't necessarily have the same freedoms you have in the, you know, I can say, Chris, I need to talk to you. It just, you're forced to live with it and fight your way through it and work through it. And I think too, it was the same with the photography. It was just sitting with it, being willing to sit with it and just let things go their way. And invariably, the bed sort of moves on.
It's so interesting you say that. I'm just remembering a monk at Grigorio Monastery on Athos who said to me he was suffering from a kind of despair, and he said, but I'm prepared to work on this for the next 5 or 10 years. And I thought, what patience. And so I love that idea of not leaving. The writer Ron Carlson said the most important thing for a writer is not to get up from his desk.
That's exactly
Maybe in the monastery you can't get up from your desk.
So, it's, and then also to be part of the community, to be allowed into the community and to be able to live the life. I mean, that, I couldn't have done it as a guest. I couldn't have done it from the outside. And I really didn't know what I was trying to do. I mean, one time I saw a monk, once again, walking to the chapel, and he's going back to his cell, and he said, boy, you really must be bored here. I mean, you know, you've been covering wars, you've been doing this, and I looked at him and I said, are you crazy? I said, I guess I'm supposedly trying to photograph God. Bored? I'm freaked out of my mind. So, yeah, I don't know, but it was being allowed into the community and to be able to be part of their life and their turmoils and their problems and their joys. One of the monks, we had a monk there who had come from England and was spending 6 months there. And one night he came to my cell late at night, and knocked on the door and came in and wanted to chat. And he said, in a monastery you don't have friends. You have people you can talk to and whatnot, but you don't really have close friends. And I think that's true to an extent too. I mean, because you come together as a community, but a great deal of your time is on that single soul journey.
You have someone to whom you're confessing, though. You have a spiritual father who's helping to guide you on your way.
On your
journey. That's a different kind of relationship.
But it's a different kind of relationship, I think.
Yeah. Can you say a word about how that worked for you?
The spiritual...
The confessor, the guide part?
I'm not good at confessing.
Tony, here's your chance.
I've been asked for everything that I've done. Let's not get specific.
Okay, we won't ask you.
No, I actually, different monks would appear at certain times. There's a monk who was I'm very close with, Brother Bernard. And he became my confessor. But not quote-unquote confessor, as someone to be able to speak to talk about things. And there were those times along the way that they really did, and he helped me continue. Because there were a number of times when I wanted to say, that's it, it's not working. And the whole idea of sin, that whole sort of preposterous word in some ways, didn't enter into things in our conversation, which was really cool.
As you said that, it makes me think of a monk who said to me once, talking to me, he said, yes, you could say that this is this could be viewed as a waste of my time. I could be engaged in prayer or reading right now. He said, but you never know when a word or a gesture of yours can turn someone toward God. And I have the sense that many of the monks are filled with that understanding of their larger relationship, not just to their community, but to those who come into their
I mean, they offer refuge. They offer refuge to the outside world, and they're aware of it. And they take that part very seriously. But at the same time, and one of the things that's interesting about Christ in the Desert is there are no formal retreats. If you go, you sit you're on your own. If you want to speak to one of the monks, you might be able to speak to him. But you're really there just for yourself, to be in this incredible place, in the landscape, and to participate in the life of the day, in the offices of the day, if you so choose. And if you don't choose, that's fine. Nobody is pushing you in any directions.
Just for those who don't know, Thomas Merton made 2 trips there in the last year of his life, and indeed considered moving there.
Yeah, he did.
He found something very special there.
It's a very, well, and the canyon has, there's been spirituality in that canyon for centuries. There really has. As I say, in some ways, my stay there changed my life, just as my stay in prison changed my life. But what I never realized in either case, because in prison when I was released, it was like somebody came and said, here, you have your life, leave it over. And not only did I go to the mountaintop, or I thought I did, but I met the guru, but he gave me the answer, or she gave me the answer. And it was kind of like, wow, that's fantastic. But what I didn't realize was the time in prison was the easiest part. It was taking what I learned and living it that was the greatest struggle. And I'm still struggling with that. And I think in some ways that's a mirror for the monastic.
Yeah, I used to say that the hard part in writing a book about war is surviving the war. If you've done that, then the rest is,
Yeah.
it takes care of itself. But in the monastery, it's a different sense. So how about now? This took place 15 years ago.
Right.
You're
a monastic journey on the
Yeah,
book.
yeah. Well, the monastic journey has taken quite a while to get it in print. But you're married, you have 3 kids who are teenagers. How do you take what you learned in that monastic journey into this life? How does it shape your continuing work?
Well, I'm seriously thinking of fleeing and returning. It always, if I get too far out there, it pulls me back. And it's a place that I can go back and say, wait, stop, think a bit here. And my family is my community. And I guess in some ways, and some of you may well know this, in some of my actions, that doesn't necessarily mean to be a better person. But I'm more aware of things, or try to be. I still stop in at the Carmelites, and I stop in their chapel, just sit, be quiet. I try to find a place that is quiet where I can go, just sit. But it's still, life's a struggle. And I think I haven't been very successful in finding structure, but it's there in a sense. At times it just pulls me back. It says, hey, stop here, what are you doing? Think about this a little bit more.
A monk said to me once, how do you think your pilgrimages to the Holy Mountain have changed you? And I said, well, I have noticed that I am more conscious of my sinfulness, of screwing up. And he looked at me and he said, you're making progress.
And I think that's because you are, because you really become more aware.
You become more aware, yeah.
I think.
Maybe with that sense of awareness, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Maybe you have some thoughts.
John, did you ever get that picture of the hermit?
No. Actually, there's a photograph in the selection of him reading a letter in the kitchen. But no, I didn't. There were numerous photographs that passed me by. Numerous.
But do you have the sense that those ones that pass you by, then you're conscious of them, and then they shape the next ones?
Oh, for sure. The washing of the feet on Holy Thursday. I remember I wanted to get a great photograph. I didn't think I could, and I couldn't leave my choir seat because it would affect the...
So that's why you got the socks.
So, so as I was leaving, there was a stack of towels in an urn. And I was so angry. I remember leaving the chapel. I didn't get it. I'm not going to do this for another year. I don't know if I could make a year. And I looked over and I saw this, and I kept going because I was so angry. I wasn't there. And then all of a sudden something said, stop. You saw something. And I went and I made 2 frames. And out of the 128 rolls of film, there were 20 images that I selected for the exhibition, and that was one of the images that made it. So, who's to say? Whatever should be.
Yeah.
Clearly this has all changed you as a person and changed your life, but photographically, what kind of projects have you done since then?
Well, I ended up going back to, I did a project in Afghanistan about building schools. I went back to Afghanistan. And I also did a children's book from Afghanistan. I'm working on another project now with my brother-in-law about children along the border. I'm not doing conflict. I'm not looking for that. I'm not searching that out anymore. And I guess in how it's changed my photography, once again, it's I'm more aware of what I'm photographing. I always try to give something back, even if it's just a nod or a thank you. And paying more attention also to light and how light plays. But being more conscious of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and not chasing this sort of strange thing. We're all trying to get ahead and getting ahead, and it's like, it'll be fine.
You mentioned earlier that you documented primarily conflict, and then went to prison, and went to the monastery, and now you're more on a search to document peace. Would you say that?
I'm not even sure what I'm on right now. And I'm not trying to be facetious. Just a different look at life and a different way of looking at war or conflict. Looking at the people that it really, really affects. And also children's books. They're our future. And to try to connect children or young people with other cultures and get a sense of who these people are, rather than just hearing it through an adult's eyes or voice, however you'd like to put it. Peace, that's a huge hope, but it's our children, it's the youth that are going to change the world now, I think.
Any other questions? Well, then we'll move out to do the book signing, but I hope all of you actually saw the front page of the Mexican today.
That's another reason why I went up there.
And the monastery at Christ in the Desert, and the monastery, the Benedictine monastery of Pecos. So go out and buy a monk's ale. But first, see the exhibition upstairs if you haven't seen it. And Tony and Chris will be right outside signing books. And the books will be for sale right outside at the front door as well. So thank you all for coming.